Hey there, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corcoran here with STN. We're glad you made it to the podcast today. We've got a great episode for you. We'll be talking with Jennifer Vobis, the Executive Director of Transportation for Clark County School District near Las Vegas, as well as Haley Kidd, the Account Executive for the West Coast for Safety Vision. We'll be talking about their new technology partnership around school bus video surveillance. They've joined the podcast this month as well as a sponsor, so we're happy to have Safety Vision, as well as our friends at TransFinder, the leading provider of transportation software out there. And TransFinder, we got a special message from them. You guys, you're in the heat of everything going on out there with school startup, and school bus routing has got to be top of mind. And if you have been affected by school bus routing, you got to talk to our friends at TransFinder. They're here to help. They got Route Finder Plus, the browser-based solution, Wayfinder, TransFinder's innovative driver app, and Stop Finder, the industry-leading parent app. And their product Plus is now 2 years old and has that artificial intelligence optimization baked into it. So you got to check out TransFinder. They also have Form Finder, Chap Finder. They have everything you guys need to help you get through school startup, especially with routing. Give them a call at 800-373-3609 or drop them an email at getplus@transfinder.com. They'd love to share more about their award-winning trifecta product. All right. Mr. Ryan Gray, welcome to the podcast with me. Let's talk shop, my friend.
Hello. Yes, let's do. We have our September issue that is fresh off the presses. So you can head over to stonline.com and check that out. It's our technology focus. So our friends in Dayton Public Schools in Ohio are gracing the cover. So some of their staff talking about combining forces and how they're bringing all this technology together under one roof to really move the needle in terms of driver efficiency, driver safety, maintenance, inventory, and talking to some other districts and companies as well about what they're doing. So check that out, stonline.com, September 2022.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ryan. Yeah, technology is the definitely the focus of September. And I know, Ryan, we had a great story in there. We've talked about it before, and we had a session at STN Expo specifically on it, where we've seen the automotive manufacturers start to move into this kind of safety technology inside consumer automobiles, where it's identifying if they're approaching a school bus. And that has to do with like beacon technology and approaching school zones, and very cool to see again that partnership with Audi and Bluebird as well as IC Bus. So those are exciting times to kind of see where the convergence of consumer automotive kind of meets safety on and around school buses. So very curious to see how that kind of unfolds. Obviously, it's on new vehicles, not on older vehicles, but maybe, I'm not sure, can they do a software upgrade maybe on a car and then all of a sudden it has that technology baked into it? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's really in the test status right now. So it's some of Audi's new electric vehicles. So, go figure with there. But what we're really looking at is the smart cities concept. Those have been rolling out for years now, definitely in a lot of metropolitan areas. And as you said, it's the convergence of technology. So as all the vehicles are getting smarter right along with all of our devices and cellular data, everything is connected now. And so how does all of this infrastructure, all these vehicles, all these buildings, the electric grid, how are they all talking with each other? Because if they're not, you can imagine the bedlam that could be created if you have all these, we're talking autonomous vehicles. We have those vehicles out on the road now, and a lot of it's still being proven out. But it's this concept, again, of everything communicating with each other, and again, to affect safety. So in terms of school buses, what better way to grab the attention on one of the biggest issues that the industry continuously grapples with than illegal passing, and getting literally in front of drivers and warning them of a school bus stop ahead, and to come to a stop, and students will be either loading or unloading. And that's really the crux of what this specific Audi project is doing. So as you mentioned, it's working with Bluebird, IC Bus. I wouldn't be surprised to see other OEMs step up to the plate here very soon, because as we've seen with other technology, once one offers it, the others follow suit. So it really is the tip of the iceberg. And that's how the folks described it to me at Applied Information. That's the laboratory in Alpharetta, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, that is doing this technology. They're working with Audi, and they've reached out with, like I said, Bluebird and IC. They're actually proving this out with Atlantic Public Schools. So Atlanta Public Schools buses are communicating to these cars. And Audi, again, is looking at the bigger end game of not only school bus, but again, everything else out there on the road. So in terms of school bus safety, yes, this specific project is looking at illegal passing, but again, the sky's the limit. You can apply this to anything. Applied Information, they are one of the leaders in creating some of these dynamic school zone alerts. So you're driving through a school zone and those signs flash up. They can tell how fast you're driving. They tell you to slow down. To also changing signals at intersections automatically for transit vehicles, transit buses. School buses are the same thing. Think about the efficiencies, not only safety, that can come from something like this, where if school buses can automatically turn lights green. That's the type of technology that we're talking about. So really interesting stuff. Definitely where we're going. And we're going to just see more and more of this going forward. So again, it's great that school bus is right there in the thick of things.
Yeah, Ryan, I think the Internet of Things is going to be really the big impact here. And what's kind of that long-term advantage that school transportation is going to be able to take advantage of in the future. So really just some exciting times to look at. And I know there's been a lot of headlines as of late with respect to energy and obviously electrification. We saw some legislation come out of Maryland saying, hey, they want zero emission school buses, but where's the funding? Right? Like you can't just expect it to happen by magic. There's got to be funding available for it. So we'll see how kind of some of these states that are coming out and they say they want school buses electric by 2035, 2045. Is that even attainable? I think the bigger conversation in the market right now is supply and demand. I know you and I have been talking about it a lot. They've set these dollar figures for the Clean School Bus Act. And, a reimbursement of $375,000 for an electric school bus was the number they were given. So people say, oh, yeah, that's a free school bus. But, in talking to school bus dealers, got to walk that back. That's not really the case anymore because the cost of materials is going up. We've seen price increases, surcharges, and these buses, frankly, aren't going to be delivered until the earliest 23, 24. It depends when you ordered them. And we're talking onesie, twosie pilot projects. We're not talking trying to flip an entire state's fleet in a matter of 10 years or 5 years. It feels crazy. Like the benchmark of trying to actually turn a fleet, like California, say there's 6,000 buses, 600 electric buses a year for the next 10 years. Is that actually attainable? Based on now what the rest of the states are falling in line to do. And I know you and I talked about it too. California, this last week, major heat wave. Gavin Newsom says, don't charge your vehicles from this time to this time. Okay, well, now they're telling school buses you can't charge during certain periods of time. I mean, I don't know if that's going to fly long term, but these are, again, bigger infrastructure issues, grid issues. I mean, I could go on and on, but it's kind of crazy just to kind of, when you start to wrap your head around the scale of what's being proposed and is it actually doable, right? And is the timeline feels just very unrealistic to me.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a political game we're playing right now. The political will right now is we need to everything to be zero emissions. I was talking with our technical editor, Bob Podlewski, about this very issue and about the surcharges and the funding and, the grid health. And he was saying that, since 2007, when we really saw EPA start, mandating the lower emissions for the diesel engines, from that time until now, if we had kind of stuck with what's been happening with diesel and then, of course, with propane and CNG, we're getting close to where we need to be. Yes, people are saying we need to go farther, but at what cost? To your point, everyone says by 2050, we have to have reduced, emissions, greenhouse gases by 50, 60%. But at what cost? When the World Resources Institute told us, actually we cited a recent report or a blog by them in our August issue that said that we have an electric grid that requires 2 trillion, that's with a T, $2 trillion worth of investments and upgrades. I think I mentioned this on a recent podcast that I was reading an article that, alluded to the grid being 20th century when we have 21st century needs. So something's got to give here. And I think that is beyond the range anxiety. I think there's just feasibility anxiety across the industry about how are we going to make this happen? And like you said, Tony, I just heard the other day this same report you cited about don't charge your electric vehicles over Labor Day weekend. All right, well, we have school starting up on Tuesday morning, and those districts, because a lot of districts now, at least in California, do have these onesies and twosies electric vehicles. And granted that a lot of them are still being proven out, but as of this recording time, I didn't have a chance to reach out to him. But I want to talk to Tim Shannon up in Twin Rivers Unified up in Sacramento and be like, hey, how are you? What are you guys doing for your 48 electric school buses to make sure that on Tuesday when school starts up, they're able to run? So there's just a lot of, we just don't know yet, we've been talking about that through COVID, and here it is with the electrical game. And the price increases, the price of lithium has just skyrocketed in the last 30 days. And that's the main component for batteries. So, it's just, it's a scramble to really try to get the collective industries, head around the issue.
Yeah, I think also the bigger issue is we really need to recalibrate expectations on how much school buses actually cost. Because I think people have like these benchmarks in their mind of what a diesel bus costs. Maybe it was 120, 130,000, 2-3 years ago, but maybe that diesel bus today has gone up by $50,000 in an additional costs, right? It could be that much. And not to mention, you've got all these new engine requirements, as you kind of mentioned, GHG, NOx levels, reductions. That's going to cause more cost to be put into a diesel vehicle. So, the valley between electric and diesel seems to be tightening. Well, that's assuming the price of electrical equipment and components continues to go down, which was kind of the promise. It's like, well, scale's going to go up, costs are going to go down. But,
it's not.
I'm hearing from dealers that electric school bus is now $450,000 or could be $500,000 by the end of the year or into next year, right? Just because you just don't know the cost increases of all these raw materials. And the OEMs don't have control over that. It's the Wild West in terms of who's controlling battery technology, raw materials. Like you said, there's cobalt and lithium, and a lot of this stuff is overseas, right? It's all in Asia.
China owns the majority of the stores of all that stuff. So with lithium, so we're really beholden to them, and I think that's another fear from a national security standpoint. There's been chatter from the feds about this recently, looking at what we need to do from an infrastructure standpoint nationwide to protect ourselves. And you mentioned Governor Newsom. I know he's made the news a lot lately because he's really positioning himself for a run to the White House. So he's really pushing the green environment pulpit right now. But when you're looking at what we need to do to get to where everybody is trying to get us, it's just mind-boggling right now. And, we have to do something with the way that we generate electricity. We know that solar, it's not enough. Nuclear is an option that a lot of people throw out there, but there's negatives about that. People looking back to the, some of the big nuclear disasters or near disasters that we had in the 80s. Wind turbine, something that was mentioned a lot at the ACT Expo that we attended and that we're media sponsors of back in April, talked about, it takes a village. And we always hear that in educational conversations and school bus conversations. It takes a village to educate the children. It takes a village to get children to school ready to learn. Well, it's going to take a village to really figure out this pathway to total zero emissions, because there's just so many things that have to happen between now and then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big picture thing, right? As somebody who's operating in transportation, school startup, they're trying to get kids to school, keep parents happy, keep administration happy. These environmental things, they're like, I shouldn't have to deal with that, right? It just needs to kind of work itself out, right? So I think at some point, you have to have a vehicle acquisition strategy, because we're faced with supply chain issues. So a lot of people are trying to get vehicles, putting them in. There's long lead times. So, how do you look forward into kind of keeping your fleet at a certain age, kind of keeping it up to speed technologically? And, you can also look to the aftermarket to try to do certain things, right? Like we've talked about, retrofits or repowers in the terms of EVs, looking at other security and safety technologies to kind of raise your game a little bit. So these could be potentially incremental investments in technology, IoT-based stuff that's going to help kind of raise the, call it, technical acumen of your school bus to kind of give you a better outcome, maybe while you're waiting for this newer technology to kind of come down the pipeline. So I think it's difficult too also to plan fiscally, because most school districts, right, budgets are set. It's July 1, your budget's already come out. If you budgeted $1 million for school bus acquisition, the price, you may have been searching and saying, okay, well, I'm going to buy 6 school buses or 7 school buses or 8, whatever the number is, but now you're going to have to reduce your expectation by 20% because the cost is increased by 20%. So these are just kind of readjusting kind of what the optics are in the market and how that really directly affects school transportation professionals at a very granular level. So I'm very curious to see how the market responds to all this, people canceling orders because they don't have the budget or they didn't plan for it, or maybe, again, it's a reduction in the order that they're having to accept. Nobody wants to accept a price increase. I don't like prices increasing, but somehow you're locked into some of this stuff just simply because of what's going on in the world.
Well, there's not a lot of answers out there in terms of those price increases, but Tony, there are some answers when it comes to transporting students with special needs and disabilities.
Excellent, Ryan. Thanks for bringing that up. We do have the TST Conference coming up November 8th through the 13th. We're really excited. Frisco, Texas, tstconference.com. You guys can lock in that early bird rate, still save $100 through September 30th. So we'd love to have you come out. We got a big agenda posted on the website. Ryan's been working on that with the team, and we got a lot of stakeholders involved. So really excited. So if you guys transport children with special needs, disabilities, this is the conference for you. A lot of new vehicles are getting launched here in the Type A market. We've seen a lot of vehicles. We've got a lot of non-yellow transportation providers as well that have kind of left in that segment of helping you get over the hump of driver shortages and that home-to-school transport. We've seen a big advent of that over the years. So we see more and more of that technology application for transporting kids, and especially kids with disabilities, McKinney-Vento, homelessness. So big stuff, man. Excited for that, and interviews coming up. Hey guys, super excited to welcome to the podcast. We have a few guests for you. We have Jennifer Vobis, the Executive Director of Transportation for Clark County Unified School District out in Nevada. That would be Las Vegas for those of you that don't know where that is. So Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, wherever you're at, right? It's afternoon somewhere.
It's somewhere. That's right.
That's right. And we also got Haley Kidd, the Western Account Executive for Safety Vision on as well. Welcome, Haley.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's dive into it a little bit. Jennifer, I can see you. I know the podcast, we can only hear us, but are you surviving school startup? What is happening in Clark County right now?
So we are surviving. It was with any school beginning, there are always some challenges. Everybody's getting into a new routine, right? There's a new routes, new students who are going from middle school to high school. So we did survive. I always, during the summer, I'm like, okay, is this plane getting off the tarmac? But we did. There's always some challenges for it. We had, a big incident at the first day of school. We had a thermal incident with one of our buses, but thankfully no one was injured or hurt. There was no students on the bus. So,
oh, thank goodness. That's always a scary one, right? To call the parents. My goodness.
Yeah, no, we were good. No students aboard, and the driver was safe. The driver handled it beautifully. That's always something, an emergency situation like that. You're trained for that, but you never know how in a true emergency how that is done. But the driver did a beautiful job. So
now, was that a bus? Was the bus load full of kids?
No, there was no students aboard.
Oh, thank goodness.
No students aboard.
Got it. Okay, so you get through that, and then so now just clarify for the audience too. How many students are you transporting one way each day? What does that look like in Clark County?
So we transport approximately 120,000 students.
Oh, just 120,000? That's it?
That's it, yes.
Okay, well, it probably takes a lot of buses to move that many kids, so that's quite a bit. And how many square miles are we talking?
We are talking about 800 square miles, I believe. Yeah, because Clark County encompasses the southern tip of Nevada, so it's also not just Las Vegas, it's Laughlin, it's Mesquite, it's Overton, it's all our rural areas as well.
Got it. Now, I know student safety is a really big component for you, and I want to touch on that a little bit because I know you were sharing with me some of the incidents that had happened last year that kind of have caused you to make decisions this year to be more proactive around student safety. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So there has been a big initiative in the Clark County School District regarding safety of students and employees. So Clark County has done an effort, almost like a wraparound effort. Their facilities is upgrading our cameras in our buildings and security systems, upgrading classrooms with emergency response systems. Last year, part of that initiative was making sure that we upgraded and standardized our camera equipment on our buses. So we've had incidences where parents have got on a bus. We've had incidences in the classroom and on campuses where students are fighting, and it's at a riot level of fighting. We've had incidences where teachers have been assaulted. So they are taking a pretty holistic approach on making sure that student and employee safety is a priority.
Excellent. Yeah. And I know we saw the press release recently that you were outfitting all your vehicles, which is how many vehicles again?
1,922.
Okay, 1,922. That's quite a few vehicles. Okay. And you're outfitting them with what technology?
So we looked at all our camera systems. We had various throughout the years because as we accrue different buses, we've outfitted them with different camera systems from different companies. We wanted to make sure that we had standardized equipment. We wanted to make sure that we had live surveillance or live look-in surveillance. So we went with safety vision on our cameras. That was something that we were currently outfitting our newest buses with. Some of our older buses had some different types of equipment on there.
Sure.
And not with those features.
Got it. And then I know Miss Haley Kidd is on here. Haley, can you share a little bit about the technology that Safety Vision is actually putting on their buses in terms of like what can it do? What is the newest, latest, and greatest from Safety Vision? What's that look like?
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. So Clark County has chosen to uniform their fleet with our 4112, which is a 12-channel recorder. So they can maximize the system at 12 cameras. They have about 6 cameras that they're using right now on their buses. They also have, like Jennifer said, live look-in on these buses. So anyone in the transportation department that has that access can access the video live while they're en route. If there was ever an emergency and Jennifer needs eyes on a bus, she has the capability to do that with this new technology. They also have our total view system, which is 360-degree bird's eye view around the bus. So on different triggers, the driver can see. So when the doors open, the driver could see 360 around their bus in case a student ever dropped a book or anything. They've got more eyes in their head so they can see everything. They also have some of the data going towards our cloud. So just making sure they're saving their footage within the parameters that are necessary for the district. And this is an ongoing project. We started in April and we're still on the ground running. So by the beginning of 2023, all of their buses will be uniform and have all this technology on it.
Great. Jennifer, I'm sure the community is excited about that. Have you gotten a response out there from the families and parents on the decision to kind of go this direction?
Absolutely. Even though we did have camera systems on all our buses previously, I think parents feel better. I have principals who've reached out to me who've had incidents between students on the bus who needed video surveillance or video recording. They've reached out to us. We've had a really good response. It's also very helpful when we're doing investigations, whether it's an accident or an allegation or a fight between students, bullying. This video equipment or these recordings are very helpful for that type of stuff.
Well, you got to have an army of people reviewing the video for 1,900 buses. I mean, what does that look like in terms of your staffing for trying to manage all this tech?
So we've always had, because we have so many buses on the road at any time, we always have had an transportation investigations department. Our staffing hasn't changed, but with the video surveillance, we have funding in which we will increase staffing because we have 5 transportation facilities just within the valley, within the city, not including the ones in the outlying or rural areas. So we want to make sure that we have staff going into 2023 that are monitoring the radios and dispatch. And if incidents are coming up, they can just pull it up on the screen. They can look at it. We can dispatch not only Clark County School District PD, but we can also dispatch 911 if necessary. They can start recording it right on their screen. And we can also dispatch our transportation investigators to the scene.
Got it. And then how about drivers? How are they reacting? Because I know obviously the drivers, they always got opinions on things when you install new technology.
Right. So our drivers, like I said, since all our buses were already equipped with a camera system, just not the same camera system, they're used to it. I think they feel safer knowing that if there's ever an allegation against them or if they're in an accident or something happens, they have that equipment there and that recording. We always say this within our department, video doesn't lie, right? So they feel safer about it and they've been used to it. We've had video equipment on our buses for years.
How about from a student achievement standpoint? Are you leveraging Wi-Fi solutions as well?
So all the buses will have Wi-Fi. They all have the PEP wave on them. We can, but those would be more for our longer routes. So the routes that are up to 45 to 60 minutes, I could see that being something. I don't know if you remember being a student, but when I was on a bus, I wanted to talk to my friends, hang out, be on my phone. I don't necessarily know if students want to do homework on the bus, but that's something that we definitely, as we move forward and we start implementing this fully, we can look at offering Wi-Fi to students. We did offer that during the pandemic. We sent out buses to specific areas where there were areas where there was more of a need for Wi-Fi in certain communities. So we did send buses out there where students could do distance learning using our Wi-Fi on buses.
And you kind of touched on it, which is kind of post-pandemic, back to business. I feel like when I talk to people, it's like, hey, I just want to get back to the way it was. Have there been anything that you've carried through from the pandemic that you have put as kind of a standard operating procedure in your operation now? Or is it just kind of back to the way it was prior?
No, that's a really good question. You know what? I think bus disinfecting has been a big thing. That's not really high technology, but it's something that we've carried through the pandemic. Obviously, COVID is still much of a thing, and now with monkeypox as well, we do our nightly disinfecting with a electrostatic cleaner on our buses so that our buses are sanitized and clean. Employee safety is a big thing. We make sure the employees checking in, checking their symptoms, and monitoring employee safety. I think that's important. That is a big thing we learned through the pandemic. You can have a workforce, and if they're not healthy and they're not coming to work, then students aren't being transported, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know kind of one of the things you and I touched on was the driver shortage. Obviously, with 1,900 buses, that requires a lot of drivers. And I can imagine, like most large districts, you were facing a pretty hefty driver shortage. So you kind of had taken matters into your own hands with the district to try to reclassify the drivers as kind of just, it's a more difficult job than what they had been given credit for. And the pay wasn't necessarily commensurate with the job. Can you kind of walk us through how that came together and maybe what are some of the outcomes of that?
So we've been saying for a long time here in Clark County that our pay wasn't necessarily a competitive pay with some of the things we have here, especially in Las Vegas. Tourism is big. So we have tour bus, charter buses, airport shuttles. You know, each hotel has limo drivers and hotel shuttles. So it was hard sometimes, you know, to get people to work or want to come to the school district. So what we did is we put together an analysis, a pay analysis of what drivers make compared to even transit, the public transit system at the time. And we took that up. It's just not a, hey, we think this is a great pay rate or starting rate for a driver. There's actually a metrics and a rubric that goes along with each of the positions in the Clark County, whether it's bus driver, teacher, or administrator. And so we had human resources review it, and they scored it out and they re-rated it. And so we have a new pay rate for both our general ed drivers and our special education drivers. So what we've seen immediately, what we saw as a result of that was obviously some very happy people. You know, people have a strange habit of wanting to keep roofs over their head and food on the table, right? But we also saw our retention immediately increase. So we weren't losing as many people because it was sometimes just a revolving door. You know, we'd bring people in, they'd get a great job somewhere else because they have a CDL, and we'd lose them just as soon as we train them. So we saw our retention efforts improve immediately. And then from there, because it takes a while to get vetted through human resources, they have to go through an FBI check, they have to go through fingerprinting because they're working with students, right? So after a while, within 3 weeks to a month, we saw our application numbers increase and we saw our class sizes increase as a result.
Yeah, and I know the local media had really amplified that message too and got it out, which was exciting, right? Because it's almost like free advertising. They're telling everybody that drivers wanted, pay's gone up. The phone started ringing off the hook. I mean, I think, did you shared with me that the amount of inbound inquiries had increased significantly from what you normally average? Is that still the case? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, immediately, I think within the first couple of weeks, we had over 100 applicants. I mean, we weren't getting those numbers at all prior to that. So yes, we saw an immediate increase. And yeah, I'm always trying to partner with our media and our communications because they can be a great way to leverage messages and get messages out there regarding student safety. Like during School Bus Safety Week, we always include the media on that. But yeah, I mean, that is free advertising. It was way better than Indeed, for sure. Glassdoor. No, I just have to call Channel 8.
There you go. Definitely a word of the wise for everybody out there in school transportation land. Leverage your local media to try to promote driver awareness need. That might be the secret takeaway from this entire podcast, guys. Save that.
Yeah, we talked about that when I was in STN. One of the things I was talking about with some of the directors was just that every time we have a job fair, we invite the media out. We encourage them to do Facebook Lives. We have them get on buses because we have bus drivers at the job fairs, and we can drive them around the parking lot and show them what it looks like on the inside of the bus and what the bus driver's job looks like. So we really do try to leverage our local media on some positive stories.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned STN Expo. I know we just saw each other there in July in Reno. A lot of fun. Great to be back together again post-pandemic. And I'm glad you came and you participated in our Transportation Director Summit and took advantage of our Green Bus Summit and the whole conference experience. And I think, you really touched on it, which is, networking with peers, getting to talk to people, sharing with it. And they want to know, like, how did you do it? What's the secret recipe to the success, right? So what kind of other conversations did you have at the show? What kind of challenges did people share that they were having? And were you able to kind of give them some advice on maybe how to improve?
So I think one of my biggest takeaways was we all have our pain points, right? As transportation directors, whether you're a big district or a small district, and I think that was the session that I presented at was with Washoe, with a medium-sized district. I was a large district and then a smaller district. Regardless of the size, we all have our pain points, and they hurt us dearly. So they are challenges. But one of the things that the biggest takeaway is, and I always, every time I attend the expo, I always walk away with such good knowledge and such good contacts. I've been in contact with a lot of other districts on, hey, what do you do about this? Or what do you do about that? But one of the things that, I'm always saying, and I know my team is so tired of me hearing, is that the saying aggregation of marginal gains. I just didn't say this was our only problem and this is why the bus driver vacancy is happening because we weren't paying our bus drivers enough money. That I think that there was more to it than that. I think the bell times in the Clark County School District needed to be aligned so we could better service and leverage our resources. So that was another way, leveraging the RTC and using public transit for kids who are eligible, high school students, in certain transportation zones. Instead of putting a Clark County School District bus in there, we partnered with RTC and were able to offer them a free pass at no cost to them on a public transit bus. So different ways on just whittling away at the problem.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the live look-in that came from RTC, right? You're like, hey, you got this fun little thing on your buses. Like, why don't I get that, right? Is that kind of where that whole conversation came from?
Well, again, it was the district's efforts for student safety and employee safety. And as they were upgrading and they were looking and investing in upgrading on all of that stuff, and one of them being school bus cameras, one of the features that we did, that was a selling point for putting students on an RTC. That was uncharted territory in Las Vegas. I grew up in Las Vegas. I always took a CCSD school bus. It was not until last year that we really did try to leverage that. So it was something very new and very different for the community. And, everybody wants to know whether they're putting their child on a yellow school bus or on a public transit that their students are safe. And so one of the points and one of the advantages is that RTC does have, just like we do, they have responders if there's incidents, but they have live looking cameras. So law enforcement and their responders can look in to see what's going on the buses. And as we were afforded the opportunity to upgrade our systems, that was something that I felt that would definitely be a benefit to us, especially as, I sit here in my office sometimes and turn on the radio and I'm listening to things that are happening out there. And to have the ability just to look in to see, especially if it's a serious accident or a fatality, or even if it's a fight on the, student melee is like what we like to call it, what's really happening. So as people are responding to it, we can give them some real-time information and feedback of what's going on.
Got it. And if I'm not mistaken, Haley, was Safety Vision actually on those transit vehicles in Las Vegas?
Yes, they are on some of the buses at RTC in Las Vegas.
Okay, is that how the connection was kind of made?
No.
So Safety Vision started working with Clark County in late 2019, and kind of like Jennifer had mentioned, we started on some of their new buses and just expanded on. And I think one of the main focuses for Clark County was they wanted to make sure that they were future proofing. They didn't want to invest in a technology that in a year or two, you're going to have to go back and change in order to get this. So we really sat down and worked firsthand with their team, which Jennifer, your team is phenomenal. I have been in many transportation departments, and Clark County has an amazing team. They're very well educated and they're great to work with. They make my job very, very easy.
And Haley, do you want to talk about the software a little bit? Because we're talking about like this live view. Like, what does that software interface look like?
Yeah, so Safety Vision has their software. It's called Foresight Pro, and they would use the same software whether they're viewing back a hard drive or if they're going in the live stream. They would just click on the live stream tab when a bus is connected to the cellular data. It'll light up green. They can choose the bus number that they would like to view, and then they can view what's currently going on or anything that's saved on that hard drive. So if they needed to get that information that happened yesterday and Jennifer just got in, she could view that at that point in time without the bus physically being there. But yeah, she would have complete access to see where the bus is and that video on the cameras.
Jennifer, so the big question is, have you used the live view? Are you taking advantage of it as school starts up? Have you had to get in there?
We've used it here and there. Thankfully, we've not had to really have a big incident that we've had to actually go in immediately and do it. But yeah, we have, training as we're in this shift right now. We have some of our buses outfitted with this camera system and some on the old camera system. So it's trying to train our employees on how to use this and which bus has which camera system. So we're still transitioning. We're experiencing our own growing pains with that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing. The time just flew by, and I really appreciate you. And thank you for sharing all the things Clark County is doing. And special thanks to Safety Vision as well for being on with us, Haley. And congratulations, Haley, on winning the STN Expo Hardware, basically Attendee Choice Award at STN Expo. That's got to feel really good.
Yeah, that was very exciting. Safety Vision came out with their new logo, kind of a relaunch. We're coming up on 30 years in business, so it got a little fire underneath us, a new look, and then we're, the people choice for hardware of the year. So that's amazing. That's something we're very proud of, and we have our product development team to thank for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to you both. Have a great week, all right?
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Special thanks to Jennifer Vobis. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. Haley Kidd, Ryan Gray. Great conversations today. Special thanks to Safety Vision and TransFinder for being our episode sponsors. We appreciate you guys very much. Again, as I mentioned, guys, tstconference.com. Special needs, sign up for that conference. It's coming up real soon, November 8th through 13th. Anything you need in the school transportation universe, stnonline.com. Also, don't forget to check out that brand new September technology issue on the STN website. Just click on magazine, digital editions. You can also find it down that right sidebar of our homepage. So go click on that, read the latest and greatest. You should get it in the mail too, but if you can't wait, head over to the website and get a little sneak peek. Guys, if you love the podcast, share it. Social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Get it out, share it amongst the community. We really appreciate you, nation. We love you. We'll see you next week.